Well, hello, we are back here. Right, guys, this is the new name. Remember I used to do a podcast called Slaughtered? Mm-hmm. That was because we used to record at the abattoir. That was 100 years ago, before they became a leviathan of an industrial machine taking over the whole of Edinburgh. Now, we are here in Paradise Palms, vegetarian Indian restaurant. So the podcast is now called Copstick at the Paradise.
Oh, lovely.
Isn't that lovely?
Lovely.
Or Copstick in Paradise. Is it Copstick in Paradise? Copstick in... I don't even remember. Copstick in Paradise.
It sounds like a film from the 80s. Maybe, I'm thinking along the lines of Brazil.
Yeah.
Not a Ken Loach. A kind of... Although it could be a good Ken Loach film, Copstick at the Paradise.
But Ken Loach films are always grim. I mean, no. This is colour.
This is fabulous.
The inside of this place is a camp wet dream. It's.
I certainly think Barry Manilow will be stealing that title as soon as he can. So
yes.
Yes, there's neon signage, so that's always a good sign.
I know. So now, I'm quite excited about this little podcast in particular. Because I want to ask, I will ask everybody about you're doing about 43 different shows, Harun, aren't you?
not quite that many, but
you're all over the place. You're all over the place like a rash. And Tiff, obviously, standing astride the Fringe, like the successful diva that you are. But I want both of you to help me discover what the fuck has happened to all the proper political comics there's basically only Smurthwaite left.
Right.
You know, Edinburgh used to be the place where the angry young men and women and these came to be angry. And the anger was about out there, about the world. And now, as I toiled my way, obviously apart from Harun's 43 shows and Tiff, your show, I looked through the Fringe programme. There's only about 3 shows that aren't about me and my journey with ADDHD. And I just, why aren't the young angry anymore?
I think they are, but I do also think as well, I think we're coming out the other side of it, but I think like being strong and opinionated about stuff started to come at a very high cost. That was more in lockdown. I think we've sort of come out of that a bit more, where the ability to admit that you're wrong. There's a great quote from, I think it's Paul Sappho, I think he's like a futurist, like a Silicon Valley tech guy, but he said you should have strong opinions loosely held. And the idea behind that is that be passionate about the things you care about, but also be aware that information can change, and then therefore sometimes your opinion has to change with it. And I think people have got a bit afraid of coming out and going, I think this, and then people are like, you're wrong, and then there's no coming back from that, or changing your mind or something, you know, when new information is presented. And I think that that's good, and I think that's progressive to who we are, but I think people maybe got a bit afraid. And also comics have always talked about themselves. We're very self-obsessed.
Yeah, I know, but we can actually stop the podcast now, because that is pretty much exactly what I thought. It's just so thank you very much, I was right all along. Good night. I mean, it is scary. We're and I'm not quite sure when it started. Maybe it was lockdown, but it's, I can't even, can I say it's very black and white? There's the cancellation, there's the opprobrium, it's scary to be opinionated. And there are repercussions in the way, I mean, people used to go, I remember, you know, in the olden days, people used to go, oh, he's a bit out there, but they didn't immediately say, and therefore he must be stopped.
Yes.
But there is a kind of thought fascism nowadays.
Can you enjoy someone's work and not agree with them? I can.
Yeah,
I can still
absolutely.
I can still, go, I disagree with them fundamentally on these things over here, but I enjoy their music, or
Yep.
I enjoy their film, or I enjoy their art. So to be able to do both those things, you don't have to be 100% aligned. And I think we did go through a bit of a phase. And there's a generational thing as well of when you're young, you have these ideas about the perfection of the world and the perfection of ideas and opinions, that you grow up and learn, there's quite a lot of stuff that sits in the grey. And if you can't accept that, it's going to be quite difficult for you you're going to be disappointed a lot, I think.
I think not only can you disagree with someone and enjoy their work, you can disagree with someone, not enjoy their work, but that doesn't stop their rights to be able to express that opinion. And I think that's something that's being lost. There's a tendency, if people disagree with something, to try and do something about it other than just not go and listen to it.
Yes.
And we've had cancellations. I mean, you're aware of the two non-political shows for that matter that got cancelled in Whistlebinkies.
Now you see, I was kind of hoping not to go there.
I'm happy to go away from that.
No. But I was very because that it's kind of partly an example that does everyone have a right? The Whistlebinky staff, for example, who are very nice, said that they were told some slightly worrying things by Police Scotland that could happen. Not that were happening, that could. And they were tired of the massive amount of graffiti that was all over their loos. And they don't want to do that. And the only way not to do that is not to have the show there. Now, I think that's kind of problematic in its own way. And the fact, quite frankly, anyone who's spraying graffiti should really be aware that they're only one wrongly placed spray can of paint away from being arrested under the Terrorism Act.
Yeah, indeed. But I mean, I think there's a massive gap between spraying graffiti into a toilet, and I understand it was Free Palestine, which, to be honest, is a
absolutely. I think we're all there.
Yeah, from then cancelling the Jewish comedians just because they are Jewish.
But you see,
there is another aspect to this. One of the comedians subsequently got cancelled from another show.
Yes.
And that was for things he
said online.
And I still disagree with that as well. Because I don't agree with everything he said, but none of it was so extreme that it would warrant.
No, I agree with that.
And I think that's and the only reason they looked at him is because he was a Jewish person being cancelled for another show.
Yes.
They then said, we routinely look at these. Well, if you routinely look at them, why didn't you pick this up months ago and do something about it then?
And it was kind of the Whistlebinkies happened in May, and just there was crossed wires. Whistlebinkies thought PBH had agreed to move the show. PBH thought Whistlebinkies had said, all right then. But what has happened, instead of more... Now, I'm going to use a word here that I don't really know the meaning of. Anyone who has heard me debate anything, nuanced. I'm not a nuanced person. But instead of more nuanced discussion on that, it's just gone into Edinburgh going crazy under a wave of this is anti-Semitism. I'm not 100% convinced it's anti-Semitism pure and simple. And I think it's dangerous to go, I've said I don't like knishes or bagels. Oh, you're anti-Semitic. It's just such a mess.
There is another comic in this, though, as well. It's not just Philip, is it? It's Rachel as well.
Yeah. Ultimate Jewish Mother. I mean, that show's been kind of a mainstay of the Fringe for ages. And it's just a mess.
I mean, I think it's hard to see something other than, admittedly, it's not intended as anti-Semitism, but it is anti-Semitism when your show is cancelled because of the title, and that's essentially what we have in those two instances. Except the issue with Philip is slightly different. Still, don't think it should have been cancelled.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. But in those two cases, they were just cancelled because of the name on their titles and the fact that there was going to be extra protection for them as a result of that. And I know that makes a difference, but cancelling the Jewish acts on the bill just because you're a bit concerned over some graffiti in the thing is not a proportionate action. No,
it's not a proportionate action, and it's not right, but I don't think it is anti-Semitism pure and simple.
Okay, I'll agree it's not pure and simple. I still think it's anti-Semitism. I don't think we have to agree to disagree on that point, which we can do because we are civilised people. Indeed. And I'm still going to come and watch your show. I'm still going to come and do your show. Indeed.
Now, Tiff, who is a woman whose opinions I have always valued, is of the opinion, and I think this is the gist of the PR release that I got, is of the opinion that if people would just shag before making any of these decisions, if the bar staff at Whistlepinkies had just given one another a right good seeing to before deciding to peremptorily cancel the shows, they'd have made better decisions.
Well, I say the UN should only meet up after everyone. Yeah, because it's a good way to de-escalate when everyone's a bit more... I guess one of the bigger ideas in the show, and it's not the only idea, is about the fact that sex is a distraction. So get it out the way at the top. It's not a very sexy show. And then we can...
You're doing it, Tiff. It has to be a sexy show.
Thank you very much. I'll take the compliment. But our brains can stretch their legs. It's a feature of capitalism, isn't it? That sex is right at the front of selling everything. And so it underpins. I mean, I'm talking about sexiness. Who gets to own sexiness? Who gets to be empowered by it? Who's exploited by it? And I think that's a class line, which I'm very, very interested in. So that's one of the big themes of the show. Is like, a lot of the times things that you might see as sexualized. If it's middle class women doing it, it's empowering. But if it's working class women doing it out of necessity,
100%.
It is exploitation.
100%.
So where is the line between these two, and why is it class based, and why is one okay but the other isn't? So that's one of the explorations. But it is also a show about mortality. I'm dealing with a parent with dementia. I say dealing with, and I say this in the show. I say dealing with, I'm talking about it on stage, which is not the same as dealing with something. And I think comedians often fool themselves into thinking, well, if I just say it, I've heard comics go, well, I'm an arsehole and I'm very self-aware. I'm acknowledging that on stage. And you're like, are you going to do anything about it though? No. But I guess that is a thing. If you've got aging parents, you're facing your own mortality. The idea of how long you have to stay sexy for, as someone in showbiz, which it seems like until you're on your deathbed now. Like, I feel like people are going, am I going to be thirst trapping on the gram in my 70s? Is that where we're heading? So I'm sort of exploring mortality, sex, class. All of that is tied up into a package, but one of the things is...
That sounds like a 4-hour show.
It could be. It could be. If I had my way, it would be. My husband's always like, you've got so many bloody ideas, let's just finesse it. But, not in a huge... There's funny routines in it. I'm making it sound like it's very serious, but, it's fun.
I think that what you were saying about how long do you have to stay sexy for... It kind of depends if you start out sexy.
Yeah.
And it was the older I get, and I am unfeasibly old, I've almost begun to feel sorry for good-looking people.
Because they didn't have to work on their personalities.
Because, it's not that. They have something to lose.
Yeah.
And they have worries about, it's a wrinkle. I've always looked like a dog's breakfast.
I don't think you look like a dog's breakfast.
And it's if what you sell yourself on is kind of quirk and look, the fuzzy hair and whatnot, you've got nothing to lose. So as you hurtle down the slopes into old age, it just doesn't... All that happens is you get more relaxed about it.
Well, beauty is a...
How long did it take you to do your hair this morning?
Oh, not long at all, because I slept in curlers last night.
Sleeping in curlers?
Like it's the 19th. Only because I don't want to put... Only because I don't want heat in it, so I just sleep in them. It's very... And then I take it out, and so not long at all. Mm-hmm. But beauty is... Beauty is like a... There's a great, it's not my quote, so I can't say it's my quote, but Eve Babbitt's, there's a book called Eve's Hollywood, and she was like almost like an it girl in the 60s and 70s, and her godfather was Stravinsky, and like that. It's a very interesting book about what happened after the Depression and how the smart people went to the East Coast, the brains, and then the beautiful people went to the West Coast. So it's kind of about this mythology of America, but there's a bit in it and she's very attractive, but she talks about truly beautiful people, like almost like alien, and she said beauty's sort of the privilege that dares not to speak its name. Like talent knows why it's in the room, but beauty never wants to acknowledge. And I do have a bit in the show about manifesting, of it being sort of hot girl currency. When someone says we're going to manifest this, and you're like, people are so kind to me, and I manifested it, and you're like, no, that's genetics. Like you were born beautiful, and you look beautiful, and people are kind because you are. So there's something really interesting. And if you've been on the receiving end of being, you know, which I was when I was younger in my 20s, you know, and I was hot. I'm hot now, just in a perimenopausal sense, I guess. It's a different type of, you know, but it's interesting when that goes, and you can notice people, you know, as I've got slightly older, I have like, there was a gig and a man was really, really rude to me, and I feel like I hadn't had that for years, and I was like, oh, is this because I'm in my 40s and he thinks I can just be dismissed and I'm irrelevant, and therefore he doesn't have to be kind to me because I'm not offering anything to him. It's interesting.
Do men, she said, looking at Harun, do men suffer from this at all?
I don't. I can't. I'm not sure I can talk for the generality of men. I'm sure there are some men who do, but I don't. Well, I've never considered myself particularly good looking, so it's never really bothered me.
I mean, do you? And it's not that I'm suggesting in any way that you're not an astoundingly good-looking man.
Let's just assume that's what you think.
But, do you ever wish that you'd been born an absolute Adonis? Ooh. Would it have made things easier?
You know what? I suspect it probably would. And I'm not just saying that because, of course, I would like to have had more sex when I was younger than I did because I wasn't that good looking. But I think there's also some evidence about that. I've seen. I'm an HR person by day.
Really?
Comedy, yeah. So I take interest in some of this psychological stuff, and there is evidence that good-looking people have an easier time getting jobs than not so good-looking people. So yes, in that respect, I'm sure I probably would have done it. I'm sure my career would be much better both in comedy and in HR than it is with my ugly mug as it is.
And would you have been so political if everything had just been going swimmingly for you?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I was political from a young age, so don't know. No, good question. That's a good question. I worked in Parliament, so that's one reason I'm political. So if I'd fallen into that anyway, then I might well have been. But you're quite right. If you're a good-looking person of either gender, and things are all going your way, you might be less interested in politics, which in the end of the day is about the state of state of the world and so on.
You've got no fights to fight.
If you think your life's quite nice.
Yeah.
And then I've always had like a strong sense of injustice. When I was like 14, I think I went on Kilroy to like talk about, it was about like comprehensive schools versus private schools and how like education should be equally accessible for everyone no matter their social economic status. I was about 14 when I did that. So I've always
God, you must have been unbearable.
Oh yeah, probably. Yeah, I think I still am. Let's be fair. Let's be fair. There's definitely people that don't enjoy what I do.
No, I see. I just go back to the beginning. I really miss all the sort of angry. And I mean, we've got a world that's totally fucked. We've got a prime minister that is just an out and out cunt. We've got Trump. It's just, there is so much fodder. I just imagine, a young Ben Elton, a little bit of politics. It wasn't everyone's cup of tea, but in those days, good grief, Edinburgh would have been ablaze with outrage, not about, personal things, but about the world.
But weren't there things happening in Edinburgh in the 80s that might have encouraged that, and the idea that might not be to do with with the discourse of politics. I mean, stand-up was a relatively new art in the 80s, and particularly in Edinburgh. It was still it was a minority even within the comedy field at that time. And I think anybody like Ben Elton, who was probably the foremost, I mean, him and Alexei Sayle, probably the two foremost political comedians, particularly in the early 80s, they would have been a revolution in that respect. And they would have, and I think it has more to do with the circumstances that prevailed at the time necessarily than to do with the state of political discourse at the time. But it's also the fact that we had a worse. I mean, you say the current Prime Minister is a cunt. I did. The one in the 80s was probably worse.
Well, at least you knew what she was.
But that makes it easier then that makes it easier for you to do comedy about it. I think that there is still a problem with doing comedy about Keir Starmer, who I do not think is a cunt. But
you don't.
I don't. I think he's not. I don't think he's good as Prime Minister. But that's a mile away from, say, somebody like Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
Again, I would rather if I'm facing a monster, I at least would expect that monster to go, right, I'm a monster, this is me, and not do, I'm a lovely guy. Oh, by the way, did I mention Pip?
Well, but Boris did a version of I'm a lovely guy, which was I'm a laugh.
Yeah.
Boris did a version of that. It was just a different presentation of it, but it was like, oh, aren't I, isn't it all, aren't I just like a silly, like a bit of a laugh, you know?
Yeah, believe what I say.
Yeah. Now get this segue. I should do this professionally. Talking of laughs, tell us about your show as we wrap up.
The show's called Postcoital. It's on at the Monkey Barrel in the Hive, which, just fair warning, it's a great venue for comedy. It is the kind of venue where if you put your bag on the floor, it will get an STD. It's grimy, but it suits stand-up. I'm on at 2:50 p.m. I am doing a show about mortality, life, death, who we will become when we're older. That's one of the So it's about umbrellas, it's about witches, it's about entrainment. There's some, if you're interested in any of those things.
Marvellous. Now, Harun, can you talk us through your 43 shows?
Yes, indeed. This is an extended version of the programme, isn't it? I'll do this very quickly. 9:30 a.m. every day, Apolitical Breakfast, which is a political comedy panel show mixed between Have I Got News For You and Question Time. Very much audience involvement. Kate, you're doing it on
Sunday apparently. I'm looking forward to that so much.
And you've done it before, and it was, in fact, it was a bit of a classic of a show, the one you did.
Thank you very much.
It was. Only partly because of you, I have to say. It was partly because of you, but also partly because of the Crows.
Yes.
We had one of the weirdest stories and one of the weirdest coincidences. It was a story about crow research done by Cambridge, and I won't go into the story, but the coincidences were that we had a member of the opposing team from Oxford University in the audience, and she was scared of chickens. I remember those things. It was just that. Anyway, so that's the sort of thing that happens in this show.
Yep.
So that's 9:30 a.m. every day. At 12 noon that's in a place called Hot Toddies.
Yes, I saw it the other day. Looks lovely.
Actually does breakfast, which is a bonus over previous years. My second show is called A History of the Last Conservative Government in Their Own Stupid Words. It's my new show. It's on at 12 noon in Pilgrim Bar.
And that is A History of the Last Conservative Government in Their Own Stupid Words.
I read through the memoirs of David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss.
God, we've had some stutterers, haven't we?
It's the worst idea for a show I've ever had, because to research the show I had to read the memoirs of David Cameron, Theresa May, Liz Truss.
You did it so we don't have to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's my show at 12 noon, and in the same venue at 2:20 I'm doing a show called Why I Don't Talk to People About Terrorism, which is a show I've been doing for a few years now. Very successful in that sort of space.
Can we bring our own spray paint?
I have to ask the venue. I suspect they would have a problem with it.
Right, okay, yes.
I'm going to have to say no on air, because otherwise I might get cancelled.
Right, good point. Or arrested.
Indeed, for inciting terrorism.
Thank you both very, very much. I want to come and see all the shows.
Well, you're in one.
I especially want to see that one.